It's another busy day of news with two major stories we're following this morning. One of them in Washington, where history is unfolding. Day 2 of Supreme Court confirmation hearings about to get underway in the Senate this morning for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. If confirmed, she would be the first black woman to serve on the Supreme Court.
Thank you for this historic chance to join the highest court, to work with brilliant colleagues, to inspire future generations, and to ensure liberty and justice for all.
But President Biden's nominee faces opposition from Republicans who are promising pointed questions for Jackson today, particularly her record on criminal cases. We have full coverage of what we can expect today coming up in just a few minutes.
The other major story we're following this morning is the war in Ukraine. This morning, several key cities bombed beyond recognition, with President Biden warning that Russia could soon escalate its assault with chemical weapons. Russian forces are inching closer to the center of the country's capital, Kyiv, but Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country will fight till the end. And Ukraine's armed forces say they've reclaimed control of a city 30 miles west of the capital. All this as the refugee crisis grows. The UN now says more than 3.5 million people have been forced from their homes, most of them women and children.
The most traumatic question I had from my kid is why Russians try to kill us. And I really don't understand why they want to kill us.
We have team coverage this morning. Military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs will help us take a closer look at Russia's military progress and the Ukrainian resistance. But we're going to start in Ukraine with NBC News foreign correspondent Molly Hunter in the western city of Volovets. Molly, good to have you with us. Let's start with the humanitarian effort. Ukraine says it evacuated a little more than 8,000 people on Monday. That includes about 3,000 from hard-hit Mariupol. What is the situation like over there right now?
Joe, good morning. And 3,000, not even close to the numbers that Ukrainian officials are hoping to see come out of that besieged city. There are an estimated 300,000 people still inside. And this, of course, is the southeast city, which has just been besieged, has been starved out by the Russians. Now, the only way out are these evacuation quarters, which have continually failed. But you have to now get in private cars to get to two villages that are just on the outset, on the outskirts of Mariupol. Buses actually can't get in anymore. So you have to go through about 15, 16 checkpoints, get to those two villages, and Joe, that is where you can get on buses, go to another city called Berdyansk. It is also on the coast. It is also strategic, becoming increasingly dangerous. That is where people are getting their first load of medical supplies, much needed food, water. They are then getting on buses and going up to Zaporizhia, Joe. And Zaporizhia is where a big train station is. That is where people are getting on the trains and heading westward to Lviv or to Volovets, where I am. And last week, when those first trains arrived from Zaporizhia with residents of Mariupol, that's when we started to get firsthand accounts from people who had actually survived for the last 3 weeks, Joe.
I want to also ask you about the southern city of Kherson, which has been captured by Russian forces. Yesterday, we saw Russian troops try and disperse Ukrainian protesters who were rallying against the occupation. What more can you tell us about what happened there?
Joe, that's right. And this is, as you say, the first city that Russians have been able to take over and actually hold and continue to occupy. There were protests out, as there have been many days in the last couple of weeks. And they came out, Russian forces came out with stun grenades and gunfire. In a statement from officials there, they said Russian security forces ran up, started throwing stun grenades into the crowd and shooting. Now, on the video that we have seen and our team has verified, we hear loud bangs and we hear gunfire, and we see a lot of civilians unarmed running for cover, Joe.
And I also want to ask you about looking forward. We heard last night Ukraine's President Zelensky again calling for a meeting with President Putin, saying that he's open to dropping his country's ambition to join NATO. That's a key Russian demand. So at this point, how likely is a meeting between both leaders, something that will actually perhaps bring Putin to the table?
That's exactly right. And this is not the first time President Zelensky has said this or asked for this meeting. We have heard him in many of his late night selfie addresses that he says Putin and I need to sit down and talk. Now, word is from two FT journalists with sources inside the negotiating room. They say that Mariupol has been a sticking point in the negotiations. Russians obviously see Mariupol as a huge strategic win, but we know the Ukrainians are not backing down. According to defense officials from the UK this morning, the Ukrainians are continuing to put up a very good fight. Russians forces are not being able to continue to encroach on that city. But as far as what will get Vladimir Putin to the table, Dmitry Peskov is speaking right now in Moscow. We may get some indication after that press conference whether or not anything has changed. But up until now, Joe, we have no indication that Vladimir Putin is serious about getting to the table with President Zelensky.
All right, Molly Hunter reporting from Ukraine. Molly, thank you so much.
Let's get more on the situation in Ukraine with NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. Colonel, good to have you on again. I want to start by asking you about the Ukrainian military's latest operational report. For those unfamiliar, the report claims that Russian forces on the ground have food and ammunition stockpiles that will last no more than just 3 days. However, the report also says that in the sky, Russia's aviation presence has increased over the past 24 hours. So knowing all that, is it fair to say Russia has had more success in the skies than it has on the ground?
Well, it hasn't had very much success on the ground by their own standards. They didn't achieve their objectives. They didn't achieve anything as quickly as they thought they would. And a lot of it has to do with the courage of the Ukrainian people and the anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons they've received from the West. But the Russians have also suffered from an inability to use their tactical capabilities to the fullest. They tend to stick to the roads. They're all in vehicles. They're easy to pick off. They don't have security on the flanks or to the front. It is easy for the Russians to resupply on the ground, less easy in the air because they do not have tactical air superiority. There is air parity at best in some areas. And the Ukrainians have ground